Hi, welcome to our class, continuing with the Cold War. In this class, we are going to see one of the major events of Cold War, which was the Cuban Missile Crisis. Why Cuba? You may be asking, because Cuba, the United States, the Soviet Union, what is the relationship, or what was the relationship between these countries at that time? Well, in order to remind and to bring this to our class, please remember that in 1960, or after the end of World War II, there were two superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union. What was the race they were running? It was the armament race. As we said in previous classes, both of them had arms and weapons to wipe out the other. So it was the continuation of the production of atomic bombs, hydrogen bombs, and more powerful bombs, and even missiles. They were developing some important modern weapons as regards the way they should be launched. If you remember, in World War II, the bombs in Nagasaki and Hiroshima were dropped from a plane. Now they developed a kind of weapon, the missiles, that could be launched from distant places. It was not necessary to be there in the place, and that was the problem. Well, so let's contextualize. In Cuba, there was a president, but the president was a facto president. From 1952 to 1959, General Batista was the president of Cuba. He was a dictator. And he was cruel. And you may be asking, why Cuba? Remember that Cuba is very near the coast of the United States. So just 160 kilometers, if we take into account the coasts, is the distance between Cuba and the United States. So the United States capitalist system helped Batista, the dictator, to keep Cuba calm and quiet, because in that way the American companies profited more. In fact, they also received favors from the Cuban government because they didn't pay the amount of taxes that they should pay at that time. But that was something that benefited, obviously, the business of the United States and private companies. But what happened? Batista was becoming more and more cruel. And this complicated the business of the United States, because Cuba was not calm and quiet as it was required to profit more from the companies that were established and were set up there. So the United States cut off the supplies of arms to Batista, because they supplied arms to Batista to keep the reactionaries quiet. As he became more and more cruel, the United States decided to stop the supply of weapons. And they saw in Fidel Castro, an opportunity to overthrow Batista. So when they saw that Castro was becoming popular, they decided to direct all their support to Fidel Castro. And Fidel Castro, obviously with the support of the United States, with the weapons that he received, he and the groups of men that responded to him overthrew Batista. So they overthrew Batista, and he became, in 1959, 1960, the leader of the Cuban government. But the relation between Castro and, at that time, at first Eisenhower and then John Kennedy, the presidents of the United States, the relation was not calm as it was with Batista. Why? Because the measures that Castro started taking were against the United States. For example, he nationalized all American companies. Private property was lost. Capitalists lost a lot of money. So Kennedy, the president of the United States at that time, decided that the island should be checked as they had decided. Remember when in World War II they decided to check Japan. So Castro nationalized American companies, and he also blamed the United States for the island's poverty. The United States government decided to they had already decided to stop the arms supplies to Batista and now to Castro, of course, but also they decided to stop buying the sugar that Cuba produced. And the economy of Cuba was based on sugar. So they were destroying the economy of Cuba. What did Castro do? Castro asked for help to the Soviet Union. Who was the leader of the Soviet Union? Nikita Khrushchev. Stalin had already died, so Nikita Khrushchev was the new leader of the Soviet Union. And the Soviet Union, obviously, they were in the Cold War fighting the two ideologies, capitalism and communism, and this was an opportunity for the Soviet Union to add another country under the communist system. So Nikita Khrushchev agreed to help Cuba with this fact of buying sugar and not destroying the economy of the island. There were some refugees in the United States, some Cuban refugees that obviously escaped from the island when Castro took the power. They had been talking to Dwight D. Eisenhower, the President of the United States, but in 1961, John Fitzgerald Kennedy took the power and became democratically the President of the United States. And together with the CIA, the Central Intelligence Agency that, remember, had been set up by the President Truman, they decided that it was time to punish Cuba. So they were absolutely sure that they could invade the island with the help of these refugees. So the CIA had a plan to invade Cuba and overthrow Castro. John Kennedy allowed the plan. On April 17, 1961, Castro opponents landed at the Cochinos Bay, or Bahía de los Cochinos, the Bay of the Pigs in English, but you know that you cannot translate names, so it is the Cochinos Bay. In that bay, the Cuban refugees, with the help of some soldiers of the American army, landed in order to invade the island. The Cuban refugees told Kennedy and the CIA that there were many people waiting for them to join that army so as to overthrow Fidel Castro. The United States didn't want to send too many soldiers because they wanted the refugees and the local people to overthrow Castro. They didn't want to show the world that they were the ones who overthrew the president of Cuba. So they landed on that bay, but it was a terrible plan because nobody joined the refugees and the soldiers in the Cochinos Bay. Nobody, and the CIA had old-fashioned, old-dated maps, so all the information was wrong, and they were outnumbered. There was one refugee or American soldier against 300 local people. Obviously, they were arrested, some of them were executed, and the plan was a disaster. So, along 1962, Cuba continued trading with the Soviet Union. But what were they trading? Because along that year, 1962, the CIA kept a watch over Cuba, and they reported that Russian ships were going to the island. What were they taking? If at first the Soviet government and the Cuban government explained that the ships went to Cuba just to take the sugar to the Soviet Union. But that was wrong because the CIA discovered that the Russian ships were taking armaments and weapons. So when Kennedy reacted and asked Khrushchev why he was doing that and threatened to attack the Soviet Union, the leader of the Soviet Union said that the arms they were sending were just for defense of Cuba. It was a lie, because later it was discovered that the Soviet Union was establishing rocket bomb bases, missile bases on the island of Cuba that could be launched from the Soviet Union. It was not necessary to be in Cuba to launch these missiles that could destroy and could wipe out the United States. So at that time, this Cuban Missile Crisis was at its peak. It was the climax, because when the United States established a blockade there to prevent the Soviet ships from entering the island of Cuba, it was decided that the United States was also going to threaten the Soviet Union with the missile bases on Great Britain, Turkey, and Italy. So Khrushchev threatened the United States, and Kennedy threatened the Soviet Union to destroy each other. This was the highest point of the Cold War, and actual fighting was at the point of beginning. But finally, both presidents agreed with this pressure, because they didn't want another war because of what happened in World War II. Both presidents agreed to take out the missile bases, the United States from Great Britain, Turkey, and Italy, and the Soviet Union from Cuba. And that is how the crisis ended. But this crisis was at the point of starting World War III. See you next class. Bye-bye.